there's three types of thinking. Relative, what you went through, this realistic, non-dualistic, and then systematic. I'm thinking, as I'm sitting here talking to you, is it possible for me as a 30-year-old to start to adopt these earlier, maybe get ahead of the crowd, and then by 50, I'm ahead of my peers? Is that possible? Can you train it?
The epigenetic stuff is impossible without the experience. The two halves of the brain working together seems to be something that is developmental. And same thing with the recruiting of underutilized regions, though there's probably more flexibility in that one, I have to say. That is not to say you can't do those things earlier. For example, and I know this about myself, being a writer, being somebody who writes books, writing books demands holding 500 pages in your head. You have to learn a particular kind of big picture thinking to write books because you have to move parts around in ways. But let's back up, because you almost got to the great question. Let me actually get to the great question from where you started, because there's other things you need to care about. So one of the myths about peak performance aging is that it's for people who are, I don't know, over 50, over 60, over 70, over 80. And that does not appear to be true. In fact, those superpowers we've been talking about they don't just come to you. You have to do certain things to unlock them. And these are the gateways of adult development. There's stuff you have to do in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and then 60s, right? To open this up and hold on to it. So like in your 30s, by 30, you really need to have solved the crisis of identity. You gotta sort of know, who are you? Where are you going? What are your values? What are your strengths? You don't have to know all of your purpose, but you gotta have some understanding of passion a little bit, and at least as a directional. By 40, match quality starts to really, really matter. When I talk about these adult development gateways, adult development is not like childhood development. Childhood development is automatic. You're going to rebel as a teenager. All this stuff happens automatically. As an adult, it's not automatic. You have to do the work yourself. And if you don't, what suffers is quality of life, overall life satisfaction, meaning, purpose, enjoyment. Those things, you'll never get to what your potential is without solving these challenges. So identity by 30, by 40, it's match quality, which it translates in economics terms, like a link between who you are, your identity, which is why you got to solve that by 30, and what you do with the bulk of your time, right? Your vocation or your avocation doesn't have to be, you don't have to do what you love for work, but you have to be able to spend a lot of time on what you love. And to put it differently, this is very in line with a lot of research I do, you have to live with passion, purpose, and flow. And by 50, this is where things start to get interesting. You actually have to forgive yourself and forgive all those people who have done you harm, which is very tricky, but forgiveness really matters. In fact, without it, you can't get the empathy and the wisdom. And you may not even be able to get the multi-perspectival thinking in a bunch of those other things. You can see how these traits might be linked neurobiologically, and they are. And then once you even get to your 50s and get these superpowers, if you want to hang on to them, you have to continuously train down risk aversion, because risk aversion increases over time, and it has tons of negative effects, including it blocks creativity, and it blocks empathy, and it blocks wisdom, and in some cases it can harm intelligence. And so that's got to happen. And simultaneously, you have to train up physical abilities. The big point is, what good is superpowers in the brain if your body is falling apart? And we now know, oh my God, you can hold on to much of your body until very late in life, provided you're training properly.